All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We got a good one for you tonight. I say that all the time, but I really do mean it. Today we have Amanda with Virginia Distilling, and we are going to talk about all the things they're doing. She is the lead blender over there, so we'll get a little bit more into that. But I want to thank you, Amanda, so much for coming on here and hanging out with me for this short time. I know you are a busy lady, and I don't want to keep you, so we'll get right into the meat and taters of it. Why whiskey?
Oh, I love whiskey. I love how it connects all the dots for all the best things. Memories made, the experiences of travel, food, my gosh. Aromas are so key with like enjoying life and making those memories. And then also history and culture and people and the appreciation of craft. I love how it all connects. And whiskey is like the through thread. I can't even speak. Through thread. I promise I haven't had whiskey in a couple hours.
Well, speaking of that, you guys were gracious enough to send over some samples. By samples, I mean full bottles, which I'm not complaining about because I will enjoy these and sample these out to people. Which one did you want to get into first? We have the port cask finished and the cider finished, which, we can go either way.
I would say let's start with the cider cask finish.
Okay.
It's a little lighter and brighter versus the more robust port cask finish.
All right, cool. I want everybody to know this is a fresh crack. I'm not over here sampling the stuff before we get it or anything. I'm doing this fresh on the show because that's the way the Lord intended it. You don't drink whiskey alone. Whiskey's best drink with friends. So let's get into it. Oh,
cheers.
Nice cork pop. So tell us a little bit about this whiskey, and then we can go into more of the background of yourself, and then we'll get into Virginia Distilling.
Yeah. So the cider cask finish is a really unique whiskey because it really does showcase our sense of place. Originally, we got started and we were bringing over whiskey that was distilled and aged in Scotland instead of releasing a gin or a vodka or something really quick. And so we took whiskey already distilled and aged at least 6 years. And over the years, added more and more of our own whiskey to it and would finish it in Virginia for a year, 2 years to really bring it all together and show off Virginia. And this new label symbolizes it's been all ours for a while now, a couple of years, but this is 100% distilled age bottled at our distillery in Virginia. But the casks are where it gets really fun. So the casks that we're using for this finish, because it aged about 6 years in ex-bourbon barrels before it migrated in for another 2 years in cider casks. We use Buskey cider out of Richmond, Virginia. We use Potter cider out of Charlottesville, Virginia. We use Laird's apple brandy from Cockburn, Virginia casks. Yeah. And a little bit of Calvados from Normandy, France. So you're getting a lot of really great levers to pull as far as flavor with casks. And I love that it's a really interesting story. Like on the nose, I feel like it's more honeysuckle and vanilla and green apple and pear. And then on the palate, it really transforms. It moves into baked apples and cinnamon and pecan. And so like that's my idea of how a whiskey should go. It doesn't need to match exactly the aroma on the palate. So yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, I will tell you, this is, I haven't had whiskey in a couple days now. And so this is really nice. It's refreshing almost to the taste. And it's coming in at
46.5.
46.5. So the proof point's right on there, which I love that. And I forgot to even say that this is an American single malt as well.
Yes.
So we're checking that box as well, which I love a good American single malt. So, and this is just that. But then on the nose, it's really bright and floral, fruity. It has a lot of nice things going on. But then on the taste, I get all of those, which that might be psychosomatic, or I might just be psycho, whatever. It's all of those different casks coming through. I can kind of taste the apple brandy. I can taste the cider, which I'm thinking it gives it kind of almost an effervescent taste to it. And then, it's just so. It's so rich, but yet light at the same time. So it's going to be one that I'm gonna have to sit down with after this show and just kind of critique it and go through it. And it's just really, it's singing to me right now, which, I knew it would when I saw it. I was like, okay, that's going to be a good one. And it's unique because you don't get a lot of cider casks. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Legally, Scotland with their single malts can't do a cider finish.
Right.
So we get to do things and be more creative. And it really does match where we are in Virginia. We're surrounded by orchards. A lot of the big players have apple orchards in our area. And in fact, our distillery has remainders of pear and apple trees from decades to a century ago. So it's really cool to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it showcases something different, obviously, but it is still very much an American single malt. Like, you still get the maltiness, you get the sweetness, and you get that earthiness pulling all the way through. It's really cohesive, and it's not one thing is standing out above the other. They're blended very well, which I congratulate you on that, because as I've talked about in the past in multiple episodes, blending is one of the hidden arts of whiskey. And if you want to get into a little bit of how you got into doing stuff like that, doing the blending and getting in with Virginia, and then we'll go on to the actual distillery itself.
Yeah, it's funny because when you're a kid and they're always asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up? I always said something random like pet detective, because
Yeah.
the idea of being a whiskey blender just wasn't in my realm of thought at all.
Yeah.
But I always did love figuring things out, how things worked, why. And I loved slowing down and smelling things. So whenever I traveled, even before I was legally old enough to drink in this country, I could legally drink in other countries. And it was never about intoxication. It was always about really experiencing the flavors and the moment and the unique things. And so single malt grabbed me pretty quickly. And I think it was that sense of place that we talk about all the time. And I was back in Virginia. I was doing the nonprofit thing, working at a bank, trying to figure out my life and feeling really panicked about committing to this doctoral program. And I heard about this distillery opening up in Livingston, Virginia. And I went on their website and saw it was not going to be a bourbon distillery. They were making single malt. And I just immediately had this compulsion to be part of it. So I wrote a cover letter in like 2 minutes flat, and I sent them my resume. And magically, I was exactly what they were looking for to build a tour and tasting program. I had worked at the Virginia Aquarium when I was an undergrad and loved it. It broke my heart to leave, but my dad was sick and I wanted to be closer to home. And they were looking for someone to develop this program. And I had experience with tourism and hiring and training tour guides. And so that's what happened. I was brought in to do that. And as I was growing my skill set and just knowledge, I was really lucky to be mentored by some of the big names in the industry. And long story short, when we were doing the project of bringing the distilled aged spirit from Scotland and blending it, we sent samples to Nancy Fraley, and she is this blending genius. And we even had her out on site to do a class. And we just hit it off. I was pretty reserved and quiet, and I answered a question she had. She kept pointing to me and saying, "You tell me what you think." And afterwards, she grabbed me and she said, "You have a really good palate." And she started telling my employers that and advocating for me. And she offered to be my mentor. And I thought she was just being nice. And then she came to visit again because she was working in DC, and she came by for a day to hang out. And she said, "I'm not joking. People ask me all the time to mentor them, and I'm offering for you." And I was like, "I'll take it."
Absolutely.
And she's the one who advocated for me to become the head blender at Virginia Distillery Company. She's such an advocate and someone who is really generous. She's never gatekept, and that's been really inspirational for me.
And that's a thing, right? Like, people, when they have a skill set, some people, they're like, "Oh no, this is just for me." They don't want anybody else to have that. And then it unfortunately it dies with them as well. So it's like, it's one of those things where you're like, man, share it with somebody to where this knowledge can be passed on. And Nancy is doing amazing. And I love everything she touches turns to gold, obviously. But it's really cool that she was just like saying, "Hey, you need to do this. I want to do this with you," because, I'm sure that not only her, but you get approached all the time with people wanting to mentor under you now, which that to me would be super cool. My day job, I'm a plumber by trade. So I don't get people coming to me asking to mentor as much as say
but
you
it's
would.
Important.
Absolutely. No, I'm not lying. You can flush your toilet thanks to me. But anyway, maybe not your toilet, which is a little far away. You couldn't afford me by the time I got there. But it's just so cool, the community. And that's
Yes.
a lot of what I like to talk about is the whiskey community, because there's so much out there, and it's not just like, oh, it's the big bourbon guys taking over. Now they're seeing that the craft movement is kind of a thing, and it's kind of a big thing, and they're like, oh, we need to start doing what they're doing, because they're doing cool stuff, and they don't care that it's actually a distilled spirit specialty or whatever. Like they're just doing cool stuff. And so like they're trying to mimic what craft has been doing for 20 years or more. So it's really fun to see that, and to see and so when you got into the blending part, how daunting was it at first when you started doing the blending and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I even make this? Because you had a baseline that you were trying to hit, correct?
Yes, it's interesting because in a way, American single malt is the wild, wild west. Bourbon and rye are handcuffed to new charred oak, but American single malt, it could be any cask type, honestly. So I had this one gift was Dr. Jim Swan. He came on site once in early 2016 and sent a couple emails out. And one of the big gifts that he gave us was, he said, try maturation in all the different casks you can and just figure it out. And he shared some of his really nice contacts in Europe. So we got really good quality casks, which was a huge gift.
Yes.
Especially as things like sherry were becoming more and more hard to get, at least the good ones. And and so we did experiment early on. And it has been interesting. Sometimes it feels like we're still inventing how to make things better, even landing gear while we're up in midair. But it's been a lot of fun and very satisfying to just approach it from the idea of, how do I create a house style that showcases what our distillate is and protect that. So finally, and it takes years. You know, we were distilling and aging a decade ago now. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And we've even changed from a dunnage style cask house to 2 metal clads. So I'm getting data and trying to get more and more predictive. So I had to take some stabs in the dark, and it'd be wonderful to go back a decade and reimagine some things, but it's all been a gift. And I think having this idea of, I need to let the orchard fruit shine. That was, you know, in our distillate fermentation really developed some great things for us, and then balance out the wood sugars and the oak contact and all of that, and find this way to have a very diverse array of products that speak to an array of palates. I think it's impossible to have whiskeys that every single person who tries it is going to love. But if I can have a variety that really speaks to quality and complexity, then I've got something to work with. So that was what I was thinking from the get-go. Like, I didn't want something one-dimensional. I wanted to have layers and depth, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't masking the distillate. So that's why you don't really see much new oak from us. It's really all about the balance and letting the malts be a rock star too.
Because you can see it, especially in this one, in the smell. I don't know. It's really like you're saying, that orchard fruit, all the things that you're saying, and it's not masking anything. It's very cohesive. It's doing what it. Whereas if you were to put it in new oak, you're going to get a lot of that vanilla, caramel, all the things that might take away from the distillate. I would feel. There's some distilleries that are doing that, and they're doing amazing things. But I feel like the casking that you're doing, being in sometimes used oak, or maybe even 3 or 4 times used, it really showcases the spirit. And like you're saying, keeping the spirit forward. So speaking of spirit, let's get to the distillery and talk about Virginia Distilling as a whole. When did you get on site, and kind of a little bit of background about them specifically?
Yeah. So the distillery was built starting in 2011, but it was a 4-year process of really getting everything up and running. So we didn't turn on our stills until 2015, when I was already on site. So April 2015, the big thing was we broke ground on the visitor center. And October 2015 is when we really turned on the stills and began aging up. We started really filling barrels in November of 2015. So we did some trial runs, and we're kind of getting everything together. But November 2015, everything was running. And so for me, I think the big excitement was watching the distillery get built in the months before that, because we hired a wonderful man, Harry Cockburn, and he was the engineer at Bowmore. and became the distillery manager. So he had decades and decades of experience. He was already semi-retired by the time we got him, but he has such a love for what he does. He's in his late 80s now, and he's still like checking in on me and giving recommendations. We went to him last year, like, so about these still density tests, and he was like, oh yes, let's do a call. So he's just a gift. And when you come and visit, which I hope you will, everything is laid out in a very linear fashion. It's very logical, and it feels in a long way like you're in Scotland. Like it's like you're stepping back and you're kind of looking at it from a distance. When you're in the nitty gritty and you're looking at the little details, you're like, oh, this is innovative and modern and fresh. But from a distance, everything feels very much like you're at a distillery in Scotland. Everything from the mash tun, the underback, the fermentation tanks, which we still call washbacks. I mean, our stills were made in Elgin, Scotland, along with our spirit safes. So there's very much that sense of, okay, tradition and expertise from centuries back. And then things start to get much more innovative with our effluent and, of course, our warehouses and how we even do our casking and reductions. Like we have a different take on it for sure.
Right. And so let's talk about warehousing, because that's one of the things that you can control.
Yes.
And you guys are going through the old, I'm going to say the old Scottish way, and you're trying to do it how we say the hard way, but like in your warehousing, obviously Virginia is going to have a different climate than some of the other places. How has that affected the casks?
Oh, it's huge. I really think that maturation is, I mean, they say it's like 70% on average of the flavor in a whiskey, but in a really extreme dynamic climate like ours, it's very impactful. We started out with a 600 cask capacity dunnage style warehouse. It was built into the hill. We outgrew it very quickly and moved to metal clads, and we palletize in those. So you're getting microclimates. You're getting the sun beating down on one side. You're having humidity pockets in the middle. You're having a cooler front side. And so it's nice. I don't rotate the cask, so I am able to start collecting data and know that over the years it is fairly consistent. And really, the craziest thing I had to learn was we have a 4-season subtropical climate. And because of that humidity, we're having natural reduction in cask. So we started out filling our casks at like 120 proof. And after a couple of years, as I was pulling samples and seeing the proof drop, I realized, okay, let's play around a bit. And to this day, it's been several years now, our entry proof is 62.5, the highest legal limit for American whiskey. But that's in a way combating just our extreme humidity.
Right. And because I know a lot of people, they play with the proof and stuff like that going in the barrel. Obviously, you want it to be high enough to where it's extracting, especially since you're using used casks, and you want it to extract something and not just be a holding vessel. So you don't want to put it in at say 100 proof or even lower than that. I've heard people doing it even lower than that because their climate is the opposite. So they're going to gain, 10 or 12 proof points, and you're not getting that. So you start high and end out lower, pretty much right where you want to be. So about what is your barrel exit proof when you're done with the barreling?
Yeah, after 7 or 8 years of aging, we're averaging around 59% ABV. There's definitely variance in there, but exactly what you just said a minute ago. Another interesting thing that I kind of picked on after a couple of years was there are water soluble flavors being developed and alcohol soluble ones. And looking at our environment and what was happening with our used casks and the barley, it was kind of, let's veer more in this direction too for these desirable flavors and characteristics. So yeah, taking all of that into account and knowing that there will be proof drop has been really a fun learning curve.
Well, and another thing you can do is you can have, and I don't know, you might be doing this and might be getting into it as well, but you can have some at the higher proof and then some at a lower proof, and you can pick up on all of those soluble
and
things
blend those together.
And then kind of blend it together.
You have a blender's head.
Well, I got to hang out with some really cool blenders. So yeah, it's a thing, but also you understanding the cask and understanding what it's going to give you and what it's going to take away from. So if you go in there with a very clean, nice, some would say neutral spirit, it's going to only impart so much. So like and if this isn't your expertise, just let me know. But like, tell us a little bit, if you can, about the distillation process, how you're taking your cuts and stuff, because obviously that makes a huge difference on the final product as well.
It does. I'll talk about the cuts, but I'll jump back to fermentation for a second
Okay.
too, because
Yeah,
when we talk
please.
about, the creation of flavor in the first place, that led us, after a series of months of experimentation, to go with 2 different yeast strains. One is just doing its job. It's the workhorse, doing the conversion over to alcohol, but the other one is there for the esterification, the congeners we're going for. So yeah, that's really important. And as far as cuts go, ours are incredibly narrow. We're 70 to 78% ABV. That's our cut. Yes, the heads and tails get redistilled, so there's no loss. But the reason for that is we wanted consistency. We've experimented with wider cuts, but for the house style that we're going for, the very clean, not quite neutral, but it is, it's just the bright orchard fruit. You can get lemon, you can get some banana, like it's more of the orchard fruit, the white nectarine, peach, apple, pear. Those are the dominant notes that, we're getting. So I've got my fruit, there we go. And I have this very consistent starting point, and then I get to play.
Right. Exactly. And that's kind of what you want. You want to have good, clean spirit that you can work with. And then, that the barrel is only going to enhance. It's not really going to, do any weird stuff to it, because a lot of times when you get these new American charred oak, alligator char, it's because the distillate, I'm not going to say it, but maybe the distillate wasn't the greatest going into it, and they needed to filter some stuff out. Whereas you guys are trying to showcase the actual distillate, which I think a lot of people who are in the bourbon realm, they don't understand the nuanced complexity of an American single malt, because you are tasting that grain. And most people say, oh man, it tastes funky. It tastes too much maltiness. And I'm like, well, it is malt, so that's probably why. But also it's you're tasting the distillation. You're tasting and me being the nerd that I am, I would love to have a sample of the new make spirit and taste it next to and do all the side by sides, because that's, the type of person I am. And I know there's way more people out there that are just like, does it taste good? That's all I care about. So, how do you combat that? Because I know, for being the blender, you're trying to hit a profile, and you're trying to hit your house brand, but also, being a whiskey nerd, I'm hoping that's what you are as well. You're wanting to like shoot way over here and do this weird thing, but then you're like, I don't know how it's going to be received to the audience that I'm approaching with it. So what has there been projects where you guys are playing around with different things, like different strains of yeast and different weird casks? I mean, the cider ones and all of that, they're great, but they're very similar in profile. Are you trying any, don't say Amberana, but are you trying any weird things to where you're like, oh, this is not for, this is distillery only? We'll just say that.
Yeah, you're spot on. I love esoteric, unique, striking, memorable moments in whiskey that make you go, oh, wow, that make your brain fire off, and that take you to places you didn't expect to go. And that's really challenging to I think sometimes I've snuck out some honey barrels that I've been like, this is crazy. There was an Oloroso cask that was super mushroomy, and it was beautiful. Ooh. I mean, like grilled portobello, earthy mocha. It sounded crazy, but I wanted a balsamic glazed sirloin. And it was phenomenal. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this, because I want to keep it all. Right. I don't know many people who are going to love it like I do. Right. And it was gorgeous. So I shared it with our distillery director, and he also fell in love with it. And our cellar and warehouse manager, and he fell in love with it. And we sent a sample off to, of all places, California. I was like, we'll see if they've got like a crazy whiskey club. He was like, wow, this is really different. I don't know what to do with it. And I was like, that's okay. I'm going to guard it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the thing, like, you have to send a warning, like, hey, and I could blend it out. I've had other casks like that, not that particular profile, but plenty of really unique ones. And I've gone, I'll find a way to make it really a unique note, like a top note in a blend. But it does crush me sometimes that my particular, I love him, but our chief sales officer hates peat. And my God, do I love it.
Amen, sister. I love it.
Of smoke. And I've done some really beautiful experiments, and everybody who's had it, who's liked peat, has been obsessed. Have we released it? No. I think he's terrified of peat. And I do respect the idea that we don't want to confuse people, and we're not Scotland, and we're already fighting that battle of American single malt is not necessarily always going to be peated, because not even all Scottish single malts are peated. Not even the majority. Right. So yeah, it's a battle, and I have to respect what the sales team can do and what is actually in demand. But yes, to answer your question, there are so many fun experiments that I want to do, and some really fun ones that I have. Some of them have found loving homes. Some of them I am guarding fiercely.
Well, I mean, it's funny that you say that, because in the video I can see a couple bottles of Lagavulin back there. So
I've got my Isla here and my Isla
absolutely.
down.
Absolutely. So, I mean, being a peat head as well, there is something about it, but I do understand it's a love it or hate it relationship. You don't just be like, yeah, it's okay. Like you're like, yes, give me more, or you're like, no, I'm good. Now there because I know that Whiskey Del Bach and Santa Fe Spirits, they're doing like mesquite smoked, and it is different. And I love it. Don't get me wrong, I love it too, but it's a different type of smoky profile, whereas the peat is earthy and mineral and walrus bathwater and all of the things. And so like it's very interesting. So I understand where, from your guys' perspective, not wanting to put that in your portfolio, but having like maybe a one-off that you're like, hey, we did a peated run. It is what it is. If you like it, great. But it's not going to be something we sell to mass market, because guess what? At the end of the day, and this is for everybody in the whole world, we're in this business to make a little money. Somebody, I don't know who's making the money, but somebody's in the business to make some money. And when you're selling casks that, you're going to have 100, 200 people like, yes, you have your core fan base that's going to be like, yes, I want that. I want every release you have. Yes. But then the mass majority are going to be like, hey, that looks cool, I'm going to pick it up. And they're not going to want all the craziness. So it's hard to combat that. And you can chime in at any time. I know it's hard to combat that, because the geekery side of it, and then the meeting a quota side of it, they kind of conflict each other sometimes. And you wanting to blend and make it the best product it is, you're like, but we could do this and make it cool and make it different. And I don't know, it's so interesting, the blending process. And if you want to get in a little deeper about the blending process and how you go through, how you structure your blends, because I've talked to other blenders and they have a specific way, and I don't know if maybe your way is a little bit different, if you want to get into that.
Oh yeah, no, it's true. And I do have to say real quick that I am a big fan of the single malts you mentioned, and I love that they are showcasing their sense of place through the mesquite. It makes sense for them, and absolutely. I love that. Yeah, I think it's really important to have a point of view, and that really was something I wanted to develop as I was learning how to blend. And so my first step is you have to know what you're working with. If you're a chef, you better know your ingredients really well. And that means everything from, your protein down to the seasoning. So my first step is I do a grading of the casks. Every barrel gets a grade, and it could be a very cursory one for a big one that I'm just processing very quickly. But typically I try to take my time and am checking on certain casks multiple seasons throughout the year. And my grading system is ABC, and C is no worse or better than A. C is just foundational. Okay. So it's what you'd expect. So from a traditional ex-bourbon barrel, you're expecting your vanillins and your butterscotch and a little bit of that citrus to come through, and the orchard fruit, of course. If you're getting a ton of pine or chocolate or something, that could be, if there's like one crazy note that's standing out, then that could be an A. That's if you're an orchestra playing together, that could be the piccolo getting its little solo, and you're like, oh, that's fun, and that adds interest. Yeah. And a B is something that's a little bit in the middle. It's got some layers and complexity, so it can stand out maybe even on its own. So a lot of my single casks have a B rating, but it does have the keynotes that you would expect, just a little bit more of a pronounced development and richness. So yeah, I'm grading those casks, and I also grade them based on readiness and maturation. So 3, 2, and 1. 3 is youthful, 2 is maturing well, and 1 is ready to move. And then I have my nuances, so pluses and minuses. So like, I love a B1 plus. That's pretty exciting for me. But I also often go hunting for a great deal of C's. And if I find an A, it's fun to find out where it belongs. So yeah, I'm getting to know my ingredients. I'm working with that. And then blends can be all sorts of sizes. My first blend was only 37 casks. It was 21 ex-bourbon. It was 10 red wine casks, and it was 6 sherry casks, 2 Fino, 2 Oloroso, 2 PX. And I have it memorized because it was like, this dialing in moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
sure.
I learned quickly, and I was inspired by the Solera system in sherry. But I realized for consistency, which is something you want if you're, producing something in wide arrays of amounts for different states and everything in other countries, you want that consistency. So I turned it into a vatting system where I never fully depleted a blend. I would build to match it and then move that over. So it was always topping off before everything was completely bottled. And I migrated to that pretty quickly. And now a typical bottling run is hundreds of casks worth.
Wow.
So yeah, big scale up over the past really 5-6 years.
Yeah. Okay. So I finished that cider cask. I just poured a very small amount because it is a week, and we're not trying to get too gone. But I see this port cask, and this one has 3 different types of port. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into this.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I really love about port casks is you do have this sense of rich decadence that you can really deliver. And so I love using tawny port. That nutty complexity is beautiful. But I also really love ruby ports. That red fruit note can really shine with our distillate. So having both of those to work with is great. And then in addition to getting casks from Portugal, we have these incredible wineries all around us. And so I will get their port style dessert wine casks. Yes. And use those as well. And it's that great old world meets new world, different styles to work with, more levers of flavor for me. And I'll tell you, these local Virginia wineries, I can get those casks a day after they're dumped, sometimes the same day. Fresh.
Yeah. So on this one already, and I'm glad we picked it for the last, because I think it would have overthrown the lightness of the cider cask. I mean, it's everything you want in a port finished whiskey. It is rich and decadent, raisin, plum, maybe even a little. I like to use mascarpone, and of course, taste and smell is totally subjective. It could taste like gasoline for all I know.
It better not.
It better not.
We have a problem there.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of that, like, do you ever get casks and you've had whiskey in them and they're the bees, they're maturing nicely, and then you wait, and let's say it's been 3 months. I don't know how often you go back and check your casks, and have you had any that have gone just too far, and now they're just not great? How they've degraded to a D. You're like, I don't even want to use it. Have you ever had that happen?
Yeah, one of the other lessons I learned was that maturation is not typically linear. So I remember panicking, thinking, oh no, I've missed it on this specific cask, and thought, oh gosh. And thank God I waited and checked it again 2 weeks later and was like, okay, hang on, it's mellowing out. And I think it is because of how dynamic our weather and climate is.
Right.
That kind of lends to it. But yes, I think one of the hardest lessons for me still is it's not a level playing field. With our dynamic swings in temperature, we're getting a lot more color and flavor and richness developing in our whiskey very quickly, but we're also having a lot of evaporation and thus oxidation. So while Scotland or Ireland or England can afford to sit on their casks for decades, I can't. My whiskey can be incredibly over oaked, and casks can become bone dry in a matter of 8 to 10 years. I've already had several, like handfuls and handfuls, sadly, of empty casks.
No.
And it hurts. It breaks my heart. So that's my job, to make sure that the whiskey is not over oaked and there is that balance. And I want to hit 10 years for all the whiskey. I'd love to have every single cask type hit 10 years so I have that data and know. But honestly, the 6 to 8 year window seems to be the best. And those casks that I've gotten into 9 years old now, like, there were some sherries that I think I let them go too far. And so I can fix it. That's my job. My job is to make it, show beautifully, and I will do my best. And so far it's been working, but it hurts. And the loss also hurts. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you lose whiskey, that's whiskey you can't sell. And then you spent all the money to put it in there, and you're warehousing it. And you're like, there's nothing. We have literally nothing in this cask. And then what do? You just, I mean, obviously you write it off as dead law. I understand that, but like that doesn't help anybody. Not you,
No.
not the company, not people trying to buy it. It just stinks. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, and I will tell you now that I've had a sip of this, the port lingers so much on the long palate. I mean, it's almost buttery at a point, and it's so viscous and just clings. And yeah, this is both of these are just amazing representations of themselves. Now, do you have one that's just your basic non-finished, or is it just in used bourbon oak?
I do. It's under the Courage and Conviction line. We have an ex-bourbon cask. So it's actually, if you look over my head, that green tin right there.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's probably your most entry level. This is how you get to experience our distillate without anything to really dominate at all. And I do like using ex-bourbon barrels because it's not masking our fermentation. It's not masking our malts. There you go.
So one question that I always ask people when they have, their own bottles behind you, how does it make you feel when you can turn around and say, I made that bottle? Like, you didn't make it, but you know what I mean? Like, I had a heavy hand in that whiskey that's in that bottle. How does that make you feel?
My happiest moment with it is sharing the whiskeys I've made with people and watching them really enjoy it and be happy, and then having them talk about it and bring it up again. So I think the first moment that I was like, oh, this is a dream come true, because it was already like, I felt that feeling, but the moment I cognitive, oh, this is great. I have a dear friend. I've called him my brother for 20 years. We've been friends since he was 9. And he's a chef. And we were drinking, Johnny Walker when we were teenagers, talking about the flavor, dissecting it, pairing it with food. And so when he got married and had whiskeys that I made there, he had this great speakeasy bringing all the whiskeys, and I saw it, and it became our toast. It became like, it was the whole theme of the reception. I just felt like, yeah, this is our dream, and I made this happen. And I'd look back at like our teenage selves and go, yeah, like we're living our dreams, and we're sharing it with other people and helping them feel like they're a part of our happiness too.
Right. I mean, because that's what it's really all about, right? Whiskey is just a catalyst for a good time. And now some people can take it the other way and make it, a good time every night or whatever. But what we're saying is like, it's friends and family and understanding and like dissecting, but yet letting it also be in the background and letting it just be like, you can have the best time with the crappiest bottle of whiskey, or you can have the worst time with the best bottle of whiskey. I mean, it's all set and setting and how you're wanting to do it, and obviously I always tell people, drink responsibly and all the things like we always do, but like, if you're not feeling it, don't do it. You know what I mean? If you're, and if you are, and if you're having a great time, also watch that, because, good times end up with a loose hand and, all those things. That's one of the things I try being on this side. I talk about whiskey all the time. That's my second job, but I don't want people to ever think that it's like one of these things that is a have to, because it's a luxury that we get to have as humans on this earth. We get that luxury. And the fact that you had a hand in making the whiskey I have in my glass right now, that it means a lot to me. And I know it means a lot to you that we can share this together. And that's really what the whiskey's about. It's not so much the great cask it was in. It's more of the experience between a group of people enjoying it. To me, that's how I feel.
Absolutely. And I think about all the time, how do I want people to enjoy this whiskey? Because once it's bottled, it's out of my hands and it's all theirs. But my hope is that it makes them slow down and savor and think. And maybe it is. I remember one day I was giving a tour and I asked the people what they thought after they tasted the port cask finished whiskey. And one of the men said, I smell my grandfather. And he started to cry. And I think about that all the time, because that's what I want. I want those moments of feeling close to the people you love and have lost. I want you to feel this moment of joy and comfort and relaxation and connectedness.
Man, man, that hits because it's all about, and me going through olfactory testing and stuff like that. When doing the thing that I do, it's really if the whiskey can take you back to a memory, then you're onto some good stuff, because that's, because everybody can just drink a whiskey and it tastes good, but it doesn't take you to a memory. But if you can be like, this reminds me of my grandpa, like that's a, ding, check mark, you got it, you nailed it. And it might just be for that one person, but at least you did that, and that makes your day, obviously. And you did something for that particular person to change something about them, and it just makes it all worthwhile, because I know, and you can talk about this if you would like, I know that most of your day is on spreadsheets and computer work, and it's not out there sampling and tasting and the glorious things that everybody shoots in their Instagram reels and stuff like that. It's not all that. It is a lot of I'm taking my work home, I'm doing this, it's a lot of deadlines and meetings and all the things. If you want to get into that part, if you want, or if we can stay on the high side if you want, but if you want to get into that, because that's the real part. And everybody's like, how do I, maybe I want to open a distillery, maybe I want to do the thing. Yes, making the whiskey, bottling the whiskey, sharing the whiskey with people is great, but when you have to do the taxes, or when you have to do sensory analysis on 300 barrels, it does get a little taxing, and people are like, oh, your job is just to drink whiskey all day. Yes, okay, but like, you can get palate blind, you can do all the things. So if you want to dip into that, into the, I guess, the dark side of distilling.
Yeah. People ask all the time, can I come shadow you? Can I come work with you for a day? And I have to do this moment of, I want to bring them in, but like, do they want the real world, or do they want the fun 1%? Yeah. And I'm lucky. I work with incredible people. I love what I do. There are challenges and there are hard parts of every day. My highlight, and one thing that I do enjoy talking about, is I do something called Barrel Boot Camp. And Barrel Boot Camp, I can just dedicate time. Usually it's 2 weeks in the spring, sometimes 3, 2 weeks to 3 weeks in the fall. And these are prime windows that I've identified for speed dating my whiskey. So I run through a ton and I make my final decisions. I've been monitoring these casks year round, but here I'm going through, pulling out what I want. These for small batches, these for these main lines, these for single barrels, these for future experiments. This is, whatever it's going to be. And then we begin the dumps. And then it's slow reductions. And if people knew how much math I do, I think they would be stunned. I actually love chemistry. I wish I could go back to high school and college and like retake chemistry, because I think I see how practical it is now, and I didn't then. But there's a heck of a lot of math and a heck of a lot of chemistry. I'm always doing formulas. I'm always figuring out, from this percentage and it's basically algebra, which was always my favorite type of math. So I'm kind of lucky there too. I can't complain. I've got it pretty good, if we're honest. Right. But yeah, there's a lot of deadlines. There's a lot of stress. Things change. You have to be able to pivot on a dime and be able to just make things happen. And for me, one of the hardest things is letting go of something when I feel like, oh, but I can keep making it better. Deadlines are my nemesis. And I've never not made a deadline. I have always been ready, and I'm very proud of that, because there have been some crazy moments. But that's hard, and it's something where you're always going to have to compromise. And I don't love compromise, so that's probably the nitty gritty real side.
Yeah, well, and it's also that thing where you're sampling the barrels and you're like, man, this, like you're saying, this barrel is getting good. It's turning into something. And then you're like, oh, deadline's here, we need to dump. But you're like, it's almost there. I can't dump it too early. Like blah, blah, blah. And then you get like really frustrated, because it's never going to be perfect, right? It's never going to be perfect, because each cask is different. Each cask reacts differently. And then maybe the day you're blending it, and I don't know, you can talk about this, but your palate might be a little off, and we can dive into that a little bit as well. Like obviously, if you're the blender, and I know you probably have a team that helps you as well, and you can say, hey, try this, what do you think of it, and stuff like that. But like, it's kind of up to you, the final product of what's going on. So like, if you're off a day, I mean, that's going to mess up the whole process. I mean, obviously you'll be able to hit the profile and it'll be okay, but like, you'll be like, man, that wasn't really my best day, and tell us about palate fatigue and, how you go about getting through said whiskeys? You know, obviously you're spitting. That's the main thing, right?
You have to. I mean, I do not spit when it comes to final blends. I think it's really important to know the finish. That's how I operate. I love a good long finish. There's nothing more disappointing to me than having a decent whiskey and then going, oh, that was forgettable at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I'm in the home stretch, I'm fully experiencing that whiskey in every way.
Awesome.
But yes, when you're going through hundreds of samples in 2 hours, you better not be consuming that whiskey. Yeah. My palate is best in the morning. So I often do not eat until 11:30 or 12. And I eat like it's my job, and I drink so much water. I will be drinking water till the moment I fall asleep. Like, it's insane how much water I drink, but I'm very much about staying sober and being careful about this. So yeah, typically my window could be 6 a.m. we have a morning meet, stand up at 9 a.m. So I'm usually like wrapping things up by that time. Which sounds crazy. And yeah, my friends are used to me saying things like, oh, I'm only drinking at work this week, or I haven't had anything since 9. And I don't mean it to be, facetious or anything. It's just literally the answer to the question of what I was doing and when I last drank. So yeah, I think there are lots of tricks to keep your palate sharp. My biggest fear was during COVID. I was so frightened that I was going to lose my smell, my sense of smell. And so I did finally get it, and it was towards the end, and it wasn't bad. I'd already been like double vaxxed at that point. But I have a Lazy Susan style spinner of spices. So it's my spice rack. And I decided when I was sick, I was going to spin it blind, open one and smell it. And I knew I could smell, like I could smell everything, but I go to do it for the first time and nothing. And I panic. And it was rosemary, which I hadn't used, and it was still sealed.
Of course.
I opened everything else, not the rosemary.
Of course, because you would have been able to smell rosemary for sure.
Oh yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, and I think that's the hard thing for, like you're saying, you're going through all of these samples in a couple of hours. And so like you're having to, and so when you're doing that, and you don't have to give me trade secrets, I'm not asking for that, but like when you're doing that, are you just grading them like you're saying A, B, C, 1, 2, 3 as you're going through? Or is it a little more, do you give a tasting note? Because I just got done doing blind tastings for the Texas Whiskey Festival. And I can't tell you guys who's the winner yet, although probably by the time this comes out, it'll already be over, but I can't tell you who the winner was. But I'm just saying, we went through 20, 30 a day, and we did it in 2 days. And like, I felt palate fatigued, and I'm like, man, what is going on? And of course I spit, and I did all the things like you're supposed to do, but man, it was really hard. And of course I haven't trained my palate to do that. So walk us through that. Like how is it just doing it in that succession? Like it's got to be taxing.
Yeah, there are 3 tricks that I rely on when I know you do. I'm sure you can spill your arm and reset because you're used to your own scent. I like to take a break and go outside. That is the best way to clear everything, kind of reawaken my senses. But my other trick is tea. I find that there are so many subtle aromas and flavors in tea. It kicks my brain off in a different way. So I usually have a very mild, subtle tea ready to roll. And so I'll take a break. And so just doing water, I'll pivot to that. And it like neurons fire off. I recalibrate. And it works really well for me. I'm a tea fanatic. I have probably 500 or 600 different teas in my, it's bad. I almost have not as much as I have whiskey, but I have a lot, loose leaf mostly.
Wow.
And there are so many flavor compounds in these teas. They're incredible, whether it's jasmine or oolong or rooibos, like you name it. I'm not going to do a lapsang souchong or, that's not going to happen on these days. It's going to be very, mild and subtle, but it works for me in a really great way. And it's been something that I've relied on more and more. So I usually have a big tumbler full of this tea, even up in my blending room.
Wow.
So yeah. And it's like, nobody else can even smell it, but I can. And so I'll just kind of keep it sealed up tight. And then when I'm ready for a reset, take a little 2-minute breather and do the tea.
And I've also heard from other people, like, don't put yourself out of your comfort zone. Like if you're tasting, if you're doing a blend or something like that, and like you normally eat 2 eggs and bacon for breakfast, Don't not eat that. Like, continue to do the thing. Or like, there's some people that smoke. If you smoke, don't stop smoking on that day. Like, just continue your normal thing, because that's where your body and your brain is set to. Because unfortunately, we are creatures of habit, and we continue to do the same things. Some people call it crazy or psychotic when we continue to do the same things, but it's that's just kind of how we are. So if you pull yourself out of that, your mind and your taste buds and everything, they kind of go haywire, and you're like, oh, I'm tasting whatever off of this, whereas I didn't yesterday. So it's just staying very consistent in the way that, and that might just be me. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but
I think there's something to that you really don't want to suddenly have to reacclimatize who you are and everything. Like, I use unscented lotion and unscented hair products, and like, I'm really cautious. My friend brought in pickled garlic, and I couldn't touch it for a week because of when I was blending, and it broke my heart. I try to make the right decisions, but you're absolutely right. I think people do need time to re-acclimatize if they're changing up their system. Right.
All right, let's get into the profile that Virginia has. Like, what is your, I hate to use the word skew, because that makes it very marketed and stuff like that, but like, how I see you have quite a few bottles behind you. What is your profile line from the bourbon cask only all the way through? And you said something about single casks and stuff like that. Kind of give us a little rundown on those.
Yeah, we have two different lines. So the first line that we launched officially in 2020, we had a little sneak peek out in 2019, is called Courage and Conviction. And that's all about primary maturation. So for that, currently, every single product in that line is new make whiskey going into an array of different casks. So the flagship is what's in the blue tin behind me. That's our signature malt. And that one is comprised of whiskey aged separately for about 6 years in ex-bourbon, red wine casks, and sherry casks.
Okay.
And after the separate maturation, slowly blended together, reduced down to 46% ABV, and bottled. And then the line extensions are those three select cask types. We've got the ex-bourbon, which we talked about, the Cuvée red wine casks from France, Spain, or Portugal, and the sherry casks that come from Spain. And then we have like our premium special product, which is the copper tin behind me. That's double cask reserve. It's a little older, a little higher ABV. And that's a blend of about 55% aged in ex-bourbon and 45% aged in these STR cask shaved toast rechar from Europe. That I really love.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the core Courage and Conviction line. There are signature like single casks that are out there that are honey barrels that I've picked from any one of those casks that I mentioned.
Right. That's awesome.
The other line, which came out first, is the VDC line, and that's about cask finishing. So that's the cider, that's the port. I've got a toasted oak finish. I've got a Cabernet Sauvignon finish. The port and the cider were like our first two big ones, so they have a big place in my heart. But the others are rolling out, and they've won some awards. I've got a couple specials that come out once a year, so they're LTOs. We have what we call Scholar's Craft. That's a coffee cask finish, and all the proceeds from that go to different nonprofits that we've collaborated with over the years. And with that, we also have a scholarship with the Appalachian University's Fermentation and Distilling Sciences program. So I'm all about that. And we have something called Brewers Coalition, and that is just collaborating with local breweries from across the U.S. and finishing in their casks. And they're really fun. And like we talked about esoteric. I went to Hardywood, one of my favorite breweries in Richmond, Virginia. My favorite beer from them is their gingerbread stout. And I kept thinking like the apricot and honey notes are going to just mesh beautifully. The ginger, I think it's going to work with our barley. And they agreed. They sent me barrels. I threw it together, surprised the whole team. And it ended up being in Whiskey Advocate's top 20 whiskeys of the year. They were all like, what are you doing? And then they all fell in love with it. And then we won the award. So I was like, okay, risks do pay off.
Yeah. And I do know what I'm doing.
I still catch myself going, oh, that worked. All right.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but whenever you get like that kind of pat on the back from somebody like Whiskey Advocate, which, they pick who they pick and it's fine. But like, when you get something like that, it just has to make you feel good to know that something you had a major role in, other people are jiving with, and you're winning awards from it. That has to mean something to you.
It does, especially I think in this case, because we'd been on that top 20 list before, but I think this time it meant more to me because it was it was a swing. I thought it was going to be beautiful, but honestly, I think I made that whiskey for myself.
Mhm.
And that's, to go, I'm pretty sure not everybody's going to love this. It's a little bit crazy. I think it's
Mhm.
going to be beautiful, but it's so different that some people are probably going to taste and go, I don't know about that. That's not my palate. And so that was a little bit like a confirmation. Like
Yeah.
it's good whiskey. I
Right.
know that the caliber is there, and it's okay if it's not everybody's cup of tea. So that was fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what you want. You want to be able to, like we were talking about earlier, you want to be able to skirt the line, and say this isn't for everybody, but obviously it was for the right people because
Yeah.
it did what it had to
And it
do.
sold out entirely in a matter of
Oh,
weeks. So
of course,
yeah.
as it should have, and so let's talk about that. Other than that collab, who else have you collaborated with, to kind of get into that? I know there's a lot of people out there doing, because with American Single Malt, a lot of people, they have a brewery that they work with directly, that they do their mashing and stuff for them, and so like they make a beer and then they'll take their beer, like you were talking about. What are some of the collaborations that you guys have done other than
Yeah.
that one?
Since we do everything ourselves, the only thing that we're really contributing to the breweries is giving them our used casks, which is really fun to trade back and forth. So that is something that we're doing with Hardywood. And it just kind of made sense when I went in and talked to them. They were like, yeah, let's try it.
Right.
So I love the idea that these different stouts or, we heavies, our even barley ones are being aged in our barrels. So that feels really good. The other ones that I've done more recently, I just released a Foothills collaboration. And the really great thing there is a series of the proceeds are all going to Helene victims and the food pantry down there in North Carolina. And that was really important. We sent some of our team down there initially right afterwards to help with the cleanup and do water deliveries. And our team is really invested. So it felt really good to say, well, if we partner with a brewery in North Carolina, we can really continue to build these relationships and keep making a difference.
Right.
So that's been great, and it's selling really well. So I'm stoked about that. And then we are just now launching in Virginia, the Proper Pour with Boulevard out of Kansas City, Missouri. Those are great guys. I really enjoyed working with them, and I just got to tour their facilities not that long ago, and we're already talking about our second version. And it's a totally different profile. Each of these collaborations, like the Proper Pour has this blackberry cobbler vanilla note coming through, this earthy cocoa, which is totally different from the Foothills one, which has some raspberry notes coming through. And yeah, it's really fun for me to get to play and show off what local guys are doing, because the great thing with, all these breweries is they're doing what we're doing in the initial steps. Like a lot of them are using a lot of barley, if not all barley. And so there's a nice mirroring, and that malt being, the DNA of what we're doing makes a lot of sense.
Right. And this is something that it brought up in my mind as you were talking. Let's talk a little bit about your crew, because you said something about your crew. How many people do you have, in the conglomerate? And like, I'm guessing y'all jive pretty well together, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I wanted to get back. So I'm so happy you asked this. We have about 40 employees, and
Wow.
you mentioned that I probably have a team, and I do. I have a sensory panel that I've built, and I have to give shout outs to them. So we have a series of distillers. We have Marion Cunningham, who's amazing. We have Timmy Green, phenomenal. We have John Price. We call him Little John, but he is very tall. And John is on the sensory panel. Brian Hersey is our cellar and warehouse manager. He came from the wine world, and he has a phenomenal palate. He's also on the sensory panel, and he is driving the forklift. For me, when I'm on the road traveling, he is overseeing all the reductions for me and making sure the totes are moved into the bottling line appropriately. Like he is the best colleague anybody could ask for. He's a rock star. And then Dustin Castor is our distillery director, and he's also on the sensory panel. He's very cerebral. He owned a brewery at one time. So he was an archaeologist before that, but we found him through the brewery. And it's great to have that. All those people are such phenomenal teammates to have. When somebody is out sick, somebody flexes into cover for them. They're all willing to wear multiple hats. We've had moments where we're going to fall behind on a deadline. So the distillers drop everything and stay extra, or come in on the weekend to help on the bottling line. Like, they don't have to do that.
Right.
But they're willing to. So we have an incredible team. I'm so grateful for all of them.
Absolutely. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about the end result of the product, and you got to do whatever you got to do to get the product out. And if it's, we're behind on distillation, then people jump in there, or something breaks down, or you have to, it's like a family. You have to treat it like a family, and everybody just kind of pitches in where the need is needed. And then, you just kind of roll with that, which is super cool, doing that. And, the fact that you guys are giving back to the community and trying, I know you're also trying to run a business. I get that, but like, you give back just as much. And from what I'm telling, just as much as you are receiving as well. You guys are doing a lot, and it shows. And it shows not only in the product that you're doing, but like in the outreach that you guys have done. And that means a lot, because there's a lot of people out there, and not just distilleries and stuff, that are very selfish right now. This is, we've turned into a pretty selfish world. And I hate to say that. I don't want to get negative about it, but like, giving back, showing love, showing patience, kindness, all the fruits of the spirit, showing all of them, is what this world is all about. Like, being negative and angry and hating people and all of these things. Like, I'm not about that. I'm not about that. We're gonna fix it. We're going to make it right. And I feel like you guys are trying your best where you guys can. Obviously, you don't want to step on anybody's toes or do anything that's out of line, but at the same time, you're there when you need to be. And that I commend you guys for that.
Thank you. Yeah. I am always just kind of humbled and blown away by the generosity of our team.
Mm-hmm.
We have an engineer, Mike Foltz. I have to give him a shout out too. Like, he will do whatever is needed. And we had a day where we couldn't have the crew come out to take care of the lawn. Mm-hmm. He stopped and he mowed our lawn, which is massive.
There you go.
And it was the heat of summer.
Mm-hmm.
There he was, not looking for any attaboy. He was way overqualified to be out on the horse, but he did it for like half the day. And it's just that sort of spirit. And again, we do volunteer days, where our team gets paid to take a day and just give back to their favorite charity. And Mike's always at the food pantry. I'm always at the SPCA. But I love getting to see people's hearts. And I think it's a very authentic way to feel like you're making a difference, but you're also feeding your own soul and each other's souls, because the team's going to talk about it. They're so happy with what they did, and the gratitude that they got to experience fills them up too. So it's almost like, I mean, it's selfish of me, but I'm there to make the dogs happy, because that makes me happy,
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, and that's, we all have our special gifts, other than you being an amazing blender and doing all the things that you do. But like, you're a dog person, obviously. I'm guessing that's the case. You're a dog person. So you're like, okay, I'm going to do this because it makes me happy, but yet I can give back, because and animals have a sixth sense about certain people, and they know them, and they feel at peace when you're wanting to be in their presence. And that's really cool. It's really cool that all the things that you guys are doing. Okay. So, personal question. Where were you born? No, no, besides that. So if you had to pick a whiskey that was not from your guys' lineup, what would it be? And it can be either a celebration pour, it could be an everyday drinker, which is like, if you drink at work all day, you probably don't want to drink when you get home as well. But let's say you're wanting to have a drink. What would be the drink that you would go for?
Oh, I'm going to have a different answer every day of the week, but
absolutely.
Last night, I met with some of my best friends in the industry. We call it Spirited Sips, and we send each other samples, or we meet up across different times before going to conventions or whatever. We bring samples for each other. And last night we cracked open a Glen Turret from the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. It was Polly Put the Kettle On, that one. And Glen Turret's so historic. And you and I were talking about my love of peat. The balance and the richness and all the complexity like really made me happy. So I'm still thinking about that. It's been 23 hours since I tasted that whiskey, and it's been on my mind. pretty much nonstop since then. So that is my answer today.
And that, I mean, I love Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. I mean, they're just putting out some amazing stuff. And the fact that they love to pick, and I'm not trying to talk about them, they love to pick like old, weird distilleries you've never heard of and do like really weird finishes to it, or it's just really cool. That would probably be one of my picks as well. So thank you for that. But yeah, it's so cool that when people are like, hey, I make whiskey all day, but I am still a whiskey nerd. I still like to nerd out about other people's whiskey. And, you said you had people in the industry that that you hang out with and stuff like that. I would think if it was me, because I love it on this side, on the podcasty side, get to try your product. And I'm sure that when somebody, say Caitlin over at Clear Creek, sends you a sample and she's like, here, try this. I want you to try this. This is something I'm working on. It has to just make you glow that everybody in the community is doing amazing stuff.
Yes. Oh, I love Caitlin Bartlemay. She is one of the most phenomenal humans on the planet, and my life is richer because of having her in it. And yes, we love sharing things. And she was one of the first people I shared a sample of that gingerbread stout with. And she was like, when you're ready, I need 3 bottles. And she got 3 bottles. She got 3 bottles pretty early on. Yeah. And it's what makes me so happy. So yeah, I am so grateful for the community. And yeah, we love our whiskey.
And that's what makes it so cool though, right? Because now we're getting back to the community part of it, because like it's something that not only the producers can enjoy, but the people on the other side and the guys who just want to pick up a weird a bottle at the store or whatever, like everybody can enjoy it. They're going to have a different reasoning for it. They're going to look at it a little bit differently, but like at the end of the day, if you made somebody happy because of what you made, and if you can invoke a response like you did with that one person, like that's what it's all about. That's what the whiskey is made for. And it's really cool. It's really cool to see what all of you guys are doing. And especially you guys. I mean, I've known about you for quite a long time. I actually have a single barrel that I was going to bring in here, but I forgot it in the house. It's a single barrel of your port cask, but it's not 3 separate ports. It's only 1 port. And it was at cask strength, and it was a hot mama. It was like 63%. Like it was hot. It was from the Barrel Outlaws. I don't know if you remember that one.
That was a spicy one. Yes,
it was. And anyway, it was an amazing bottle. But I was like, wow, if this one's, this profile is very much different. But it's also good to show the highs and the lows. And these aren't lows, but you know what I mean. Like you guys can branch that gap pretty easily. So tell us a little bit about your single barrel program, since we talked about a single barrel. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I'll answer one of the questions you asked earlier, because you're right. I do a lot more than just grading the barrels. When it comes down to blending and single barrel picks, there's a full analysis. And so I use the kind of WSET methodology of appearance, nose, palate, conclusion, and I write everything out. And single casks, I need them to fire on all cylinders or tell a really fun, crazy story. And that one was the second highest ABV of any single cask or any bottling we've ever done. Anything together. So it was one of those, we don't see those high ABVs in Virginia. Not in my area. And it was a really fun, crazy story. And it was like, well, if it's going anywhere, it's going to Texas. So what I typically do with single barrels is, once I write my story out about it, and I often name these casks, like I've got a chocolate covered cherry, it's fun to have a Black Forest cake. So I get very attached to these, but I'll send the profile descriptions off to our team in different regions and see what speaks to them. Because what I always say is, we're looking for a loving home for these casks. If you don't have a fit, that's fine, but here's what I've got for you to work with. And so our guys are like, that one speaks to me. I'll see if I can find a home for it. And so that's how that goes. And it's maybe a unconventional way to do that. But I think of these casks as, having personalities and character, and I want them to find the right fit. And the reason they are single casks are because they're different and stand out typically. They might be just really beautiful, well balanced, but I'm also looking for some fun variety.
Yeah. And you definitely found that, especially with this one. And that, of course, that one kind of stood out to me, obviously, because I know Brad, who's the one that helped pick it. He has an extremely well balanced palate, but he also likes the really crazy stuff and the really off the wall things. So like anytime he pulls out something, he always gets the Woodfords and the other ones that, that they're like, yeah, it's good. But like, these are the ones that I go for. Like, anytime he does an American single malt, I'm like, I'm in.
Love
I
it.
should have got two, but it's one of those things. But that's what's so cool about single cask to me personally is the variety. The variety that, you can have one compared to another, like you're saying, that the difference in them is astronomical on some of them. They are completely different, even though they sat right next to each other in the warehouse, and so like from your, and I'm not going to keep you all night, I promise. I just have the questions keep popping up.
I love it. You're good.
So are you still using the Dunnish style warehouse?
No, we converted that over to a bottling line.
Okay.
So the building is still there. It's beautiful, but
sure.
very different on the inside now. And so, yeah, our bottling line used to be on the lower level of the distillery.
Okay.
And those were cramped quarters. So then we were able to spread it out and have a staging area in the front of that. Okay. So it was kind of heartbreaking for me because when it rained, we had an earth and then gravel floor. Mm-hmm. It was just cement in the front area.
Right.
And I would go in there and I would hear the rain beating on the tin roof. I would smell the whiskey. I would feel it. I would feel it in my bones, and it was just magical. I can still have those experiences in the larger cask houses, but it's not quite the same.
Right. No, I was just wondering if if you did have that, if you had them, laying on their side in the normal ricks, and then the other one with the palletized, if you found a flavor difference in them. But obviously you can't answer that question right now. So since they're palletized, let me ask this question. Is it top bung or side bung?
Ooh, so we try to have them all top bungs now, but we still do have a handful that are side bunged.
Okay.
So typically we're not seeing leaking from those, but it's always ideal to have the heads drilled. Right.
Okay. So my question with that, and I know a lot of people are going to the palletized type brick houses. Yep. Did you see, I guess, a flavor difference since that top head really isn't getting a whole lot of influence onto the barrel? And that's where some people say, I'm not an expert on wood or anything like that, but some people say a lot of the flavor, since it's more compressed and it's a smaller surface area, that's where a lot of the flavor comes from. Are you getting any flavor loss, or is it just compensating because it's sitting solely on that bottom one and it's able to get some airflow on the bottom of it as well?
I have been doing experiments on this. So yeah, sweet. I think for us and our cask types, it's actually pretty well mitigated. However, new oak, especially if you're playing with different like toasted ends and things, the answer is different. The answer is you are missing out on things.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So for our specific cask types, especially doing all the finishing, we're fine. Okay. These are older and it's just different what you're pulling out. But yes, if you're taking it to new oak in particular, yeah. And I do have a small handful of new oak casks. So
wow. Okay.
That. Yep.
Yeah. So the two more questions, I promise.
I love it. Good.
What is the oldest cask that you guys have procured?
So not oldest as far as us sitting on it and having it but like oldest that we received.
Yes.
Oh, so we have some Quercus robust. They're Spanish oak, and they were several hundred years old, apparently.
Oh, God.
Yes. And we got these almost a decade ago. We can't get them anymore. But they sat on Soleras for a very long time. I'm sure it was only because of Jim Swan that we got this connect. Lord. It's been over the past decade, I've watched sherry really turn into a seasoning game. I mean, people aren't drinking sherry and they haven't been for a long time. So it's been really challenging to kind of plan for that and make the changes we need. And thankfully I have these great relationships and I'm still getting sherry butts that are, spending 7 years maybe on a Solera. So it's better than 2 years, but it's a different game. And so those old sherry butts are very different, and seeing the provenance and the story there was incredible.
I'm sure. I mean, 100-year-old cask. What are we talking about? Like that is amazing. Like you could literally put anything in there and it's going to taste good after. I mean, that's just me. That's just my thinking. You're talking antique at this point. I'm sure it's Lord. Okay, let's let's talk about one more thing and then I'll let you go. Do you have any new things coming out, things you're working on, things you can talk about that are new and upcoming and that are going to be amazing that you're thinking about releasing, or you have in casks and you're like, hey, this is doing really good?
Yeah. My most recent main product that I just launched, and we did a sneak peek at the end of last year, but now we're really like gearing up and it's got an actual label and all of that, is the toasted oak barrel. And so talking about new oak, the idea there was we love West Virginia Great Barrel Company. They're phenomenal guys. Love working with them. And I love toast. So we take our whiskey that's already aged about 6 years and then spend a year, 2 years in these toasted Virginia oak casks. And I talk about, those Terry chocolate oranges, the ones that you whack and then you get the slices. There's a little bit of that in there. It's just really beautiful. And again, it's our distillate shining through as the main star. And then it's just accented in a really great way. And again, showcasing Virginia. So I'm pretty stoked for the toasted oak. And this is the early prototype label in the middle, but the real label is a paler blue and it has the topography of our distillery on it. So a little different there. Yeah. And then I've been working on a cigar blend for a long time. And I again, training with Nancy, I always got to like watch her with the Joseph Magnus. And I have other friends that I've helped out with their cigar blends. So just watching from afar, I made a little prototype of what I thought a cigar blend would be and just thought, this is kind of fun and this is nice and I'm really liking it. And then our chief sales officer was like, I want to do a cigar blend. And I was like, I've got one.
I've already made it.
Yeah. I'm still doing some tweaks and we won't roll it out probably until the end of the year. But I'm excited about that too.
That's awesome. Okay. Last thing. And I don't mean to take this anyway. Why are women in whiskey freaking rocking it right now?
I think they always have been. I think their stories were really covered up and forgotten, which really hurts. And I worry that that'll happen again. But we have fun and we love flavor. And again, we love food and memories and sharing it. So it makes sense. Like it's fun for us. And I think that it is more of a community now than there was before. I think that's a newer thing, that there are more moments out there to share it together. And that's really exciting for me. And those are my inspirations, the women in the industry. They're phenomenal guys too. And I'm grateful for all of the relationships I have in the industry. But yeah, the humility and generosity of the women in this industry blow me away and inspire me so much. And I wish I could just give shout outs to all of them every day. But yeah, I'm very fortunate to be among them.
Absolutely. And I will tell you this, and this is coming from not a professional palate, but a woman's palate in itself, and this is not to be sexist or anything, I'm not trying to go there, I feel is inherently better than a man's palate. I don't know what the terminology is and how you would say. I think it's the fact that it's more nuanced and it's like, whereas my palate, we'll just say my palate, because I can only attest to that. I find the major notes in there. And then once I go back, I can pick up some little things. Whereas you're already going white apricot and all of the, and I'm like, what even is that? I don't even know what that is. So that's where what I'm saying. Like yours, especially, I can't attest for anybody else, but I've talked to quite a few women in whiskey, and yours especially, I feel is just inherently better than, say, mine, for instance, which obviously you're trained and you know the things. But yeah, it's what do you think it is?
I mean, there is a lot of research that shows that women's sense of smell is more advanced than men. I think men can develop it. It's just like a muscle.
Yeah.
So there are ways that you can train it. And that's something that I've set up for the guys on the sensory panel. I make them go through drills and they have blind vials. And, I think the 3 things that have helped me the most are having a vocabulary. So when I smell something, I have the words to attach to it. And I've set up tests for the guys. And eventually I've been able to dial in on, when you smell this, you're just saying one of these words. So let's build into it and get that experience. Having experience helps build the vocabulary. So loving food, loving travel, slowing down, all of that. Second thing, being able to dissect. So when you smell something, you know why you smell it and where it comes from. So whether it's, I'm smelling blueberries and bananas and bubble gum in this Bren single malt from France. Why is that? Well, let's look at the esters and the isoamyl acetate and go, okay, that makes sense. So being able to cerebrally go through and connect the dots is really key for being a good blender. And then having a framework and a point of view really does help, because if you don't have that, you're just lost. And for me, you know, having taken the W set was a really good, helpful tool, because once I went, okay, appearance, nose, palate, and conclusions, I'm going to adapt that. And so I'm going to talk about what I value and get into the finish and really develop that. That's important to me. So that's a point that I'm always going to spend a lot of time on with my blends. And it's just having that for me. I'm sure that all the blenders have their own points of view, and that's what sets their whiskey apart. Yeah,
absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself, and I'm glad I didn't. Okay. So before we go, tell us where we can find not only yourself, if you want to give your socials, you can do that, but Virginia Distilling, and if anybody wants to pick up a bottle or something like that, how's the shipping and stuff like that going? If you know that part, I'm sure you do.
Yeah. So I'm almost non-existent on social. I do have an Instagram account, Wanderlust and Whiskey, but I almost never post on it. So the much more exciting thing is VA Distillery. That's on all the socials, and vadistillery.com is our website. We also have havecourage.com. So totally different websites for our two different lines. And, you know, Courage and Conviction is much more classic, and VA Distillery is more playful. Both of them have whiskey finders. So you can pop in your zip code and you can see places that sell our whiskey near you, or you could have it shipped to you. We ship to most states, so that's a pretty easy way to do it. And then another fun way to find me is through ASM Academy, which is a free online training that talks all about American single malts. So you can take that and geek out for a solid 20-25 minutes. And that's probably it.
Awesome. Well, I will have all of that stuff linked down below in the description, as you guys well know. Amanda, I can't thank you enough for coming on here, hanging out with me, spending your time. I know time is money, and I thank you so much for the opportunity to get to hang out with you and try some amazing whiskeys that you brought forward. And I can't wait to see what you guys bring with the new years and all the stuff. You know, I'm waiting on the 10-year. I'm waiting on the 10-year, but we'll see if we get there. But I can't thank you enough for being on here and hanging out with me. And guys, thank you so much for listening. And stay tuned. We got some really cool stuff coming up. And until next time, keep your spirits up. Peace.